what it was like to be a servant in a Victorian manor, before the house stirs, before the upper rooms glow with candlelight, before breakfast perfumes the corridors. There is movement, not in the parlors with their plush velvet and gleaming brass, not on the polished oak staircases or in the drawing rooms where soft laughter will later echo. No, the first stirrings of the day begin in the quiet cold below, in the servants' wing. The bells have not yet rung. That's important. The bells must never ring before the house is ready to listen, because the ringing means the family is waking, and if they wake into disorder, into anything less than perfection, there will be questions. And in a Victorian manor, questions are heavy things. They trail consequences. They stain reputations. And so, even before the chimes, the staff awakens. It's not quite morning. Not yet. A thin blue light hangs at the edge of the sky, barely pressing against the frost-laced windows. In the servants' quarters, wool blankets are shrugged off in silence. There are no yawns, no stretching limbs. Fatigue is a private thing. No one speaks of how tired they are, because everyone is. Always in narrow beds set against damp walls. Boots are pulled on, aprons tied, sleeves rolled. One of the kitchen maids, Lucy, rubs her hands together for warmth before reaching into the cold water basin. Her breath fogs the air in front of her. Next to her, Margaret folds a rag with precision, her fingers chapped and red. They do not speak. Their tasks are loud enough. Down the hall, Thomas, the scullery boy, already has soot on his face. He's been up for 20 minutes, longer than the rest. His job is to rekindle the hearths, to wake the fire before the family does. His steps are practiced and careful. A single coal dropped on the wrong rug could be a day's wages gone in reprimand. Every door creaks differently. He knows which to push gently and which to pull hard. He knows the way the light will fall through the drawing room window when the sun finally makes its shy appearance. He does not know Latin or French or the price of tea in London, but he knows this house, knows it better than anyone who owns it. Mrs. Penrose, the housekeeper, appears like a draught of cold air, tall, straight-backed, hair drawn into a severe knot. Her shoes never seem to touch the floor, her movements silent, as if the very house allows her to glide. She surveys the hallway like a commander. Her keys jingle at her side, not loudly, but enough to remind everyone that this house does not run on luck. It runs on memory, timing, and fear of failing her. "Water to the east rooms first," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then the coals, and for heaven's sake, warm the milk. You know how the master hates it cold." Yes, everyone knows. The water is pumped from the courtyard, cisternicey and reluctant. The girls carry heavy jugs in pairs, climbing back stairs that curve like secrets into guest chambers. The halls upstairs are still asleep, curtains closed, rugs thick enough to muffle any misstep. A breeze would feel out of place here. They leave no trace, no scent of labor, no echo of shoes. The bedrooms must wake smelling of lavender and comfort, not coal and effort. In the kitchen below, pans clatter with discipline. Cook arrives last, but only because she can. She is the closest thing to untouchable the staff has her. Food protects her. If the meat is tender, the bread warm, the puddings sweet, she can speak louder, complain sharper, even scold the butler if she chooses. Her domain is the stove, and the stove answers only to her. By the time the first bell rings, a sharp, precise chime in the hallway above the staff are already invisible again. The rooms are warm. The breakfast trays are in motion. The curtains are drawn back just so. The letters placed on silver trays. The morning paper folded beside the master's seat. The lady's gloves laid out in color order. Her perfume bottle uncorked, and the house itself exhales, as if waking from a dream it doesn't. Remember, a young gentleman, still half asleep, pulls on a robe and murmurs, "It's nice to wake in a well-run home." He does not hear the slosh of buckets, the hiss of hot irons, the rasp of a dry throat swallowing exhaustion. He does not hear the sound of 20 lives waking earlier than his to make that single sentence possible. To be a servant in a Victorian manor is to be a ghost that serves, a hand that prepares, a breath that never rests. The day has begun, but for the servants, it began long ago. There is a hallway in the manor that few ever speak of, not because it is secret, but because it is invisible. It runs parallel to the main chambers, hidden behind paneled walls and curtained stairwells, winding like a quiet vein beneath the lifeblood of the house. It is called the Bell Corridor. No paintings hang here. No light spills in from grand windows. The floorboards are plain, rubbed dull from generations of footsteps. The scent is that of wax, soap, damp stone, and something else, something older, a memory of boiled starch and human breath. Along one of the corridor's walls is a device that rules everything. The servant bellboard. 20-4 bells, each suspended above a brass nameplate. Drawing room, library, nursery, morning room, guest, room 1, guest room 2, study, breakfast parlor. Some are small and delicate, like a music box's whisper. Others are heavy, built to ring deep and loud. Each has its own sound, and each servant learns them like notes in a song. They are not random chimes, they are commands. When a bell rings, it does not wait. It is answered immediately, no matter the hour, the weight of the tray in one's hand, or the aching in one's legs. The bell owns the servant more than the family does. It speaks for them when they do not wish to shout. It replaces their presence with presence demanded. No one speaks aloud about the bell corridor, but everyone listens to it. If 2 bells ring at once, there is a tension: who is closer, who is more senior, who is already occupied. These calculations happen silently, faster than breath. A hesitation is a failing, an overlap is a breach, and worst of all, a forgotten bell. No one forgets a bell twice. At the far end of the corridor, where the wall narrows and the air turns colder, is the bell marked master's study. It rarely rings, but when it does, everything else stops. There is no higher sound. It commands silence. The butler, Mr. Avery, stands sentinel to that bell. He never hurries, never flinches, but he is always aware. Even while pouring tea or carving meat, one part of his mind listens for that toned low, deliberate clang that means the master is not just awake, but thinking. And thinking often leads to decisions, and decisions often lead to changes, and changes are never good for servants. Lucy, one of the newer maids, once asked Mrs. Penrose what would happen if the bellboard broke, if the wires snapped or the hammers jammed. The older woman paused, keys jingling at her side, and simply said, "Then we'd go deaf to the house." And a deaf servant is worse than none at all, because to serve well is to anticipate, to know what is needed before it is spoken. The bells, though mechanical, carry whispers. A guest who rings the bell twice in quick succession is impatient. One who waits 5 minutes before ringing may be nervous. The drawing room bell at mid-afternoon means more tea. The nursery bell in the night means a nightmare or a fever. They are more than signals. They are moods. They are the emotional map of the house. Sometimes, when the bells are quiet, when the corridor hums only with the soft shuffle of slippers and the distant hiss of stoves, Thomas, the scullery boy, tiptoes into the corridor and stares at the bell board, not with fear, but with wonder. How could so many needs be so neatly arranged? How could so many people, so many lives, be reduced to polished brass and hanging tongues? He doesn't understand the system, but he respects it, because it watches, always watches. The bell corridor is not where one rests. It is not where one daydreams. It is where one stands, listens, obeys. The walls have no eyes, but they see. The bells have no mouths, but they speak. And the servants, they are the ears, the feet, the hands that follow every ring like a pulse. To live in the bell corridor is to surrender your own rhythm to the house's heartbeat. You do not walk where you want. You do not eat when you're hungry. You exist in pauses between bells. And so, when the bell-marked guest room 3 gives a gentle ping, Margaret lifts her head. She smooths her apron, checks her cuffs, and walks not quickly, not slowly toward the stairs, not because she wishes to, but because she is summoned. And in this house, a servant's day is measured not in hours or meals or steps, but in rings. To speak of meals in a Victorian manor is to speak of ceremony, of precision, of cutlery lined, like soldiers and napkins folded into delicate architecture. But that is upstairs. Down below, the meals are different. They are not served on silver, but in tin, not carried with pride, but with haste. They are not meals of celebration, or even enjoyment. They are brief truces with hunger, short pauses in the war of labor. The servants' dining room is small, low-ceilinged, lined with wooden benches worn smooth by years of weary backs. The table is not grand. It is long and sturdy, and smells faintly of onions and polish. Light filters in from a narrow window near the ceiling, a slit of day that barely touches the center of the room. There are no place cards. Seating is unspoken. dictated by rank. At the head, the butler and the housekeeper, then the cook, then the lady's maid and the valet, and so on down the hierarchy: footmen, kitchen maids, scullery boys, with their unspoken station. Number 1 argues. No one shifts. You do not sit higher than you are. Meals are scheduled, not savored. Breakfast is taken before dawn, a modest bowl of porridge or bread with weak tea. Lunch, if it can be called, that comes at midday, often while standing. A stew, perhaps. Scraps from the family's table, repurposed and reheated. Dinner is served late, after the family has finished their evening fare. By then, the servants are too tired to care what it tastes like. Conversation during meals is minimal. Not forbidden, but discouraged. Voices are kept low. Jokes, if they happen, are whispered. Laughter is short and quickly stifled, because the clock does not stop, because the bells still hang, because every bite taken is stolen from duty. There is one clock in the servants' hall, a large one, mounted high above the door, ticking with solemn authority, but everyone knows it lies. It was once 2 minutes slow, then 5. The master insisted it be adjusted, but it never kept time properly again. Still, no one dares remove it. It has become a strange totem, a reminder that time below stairs is elastic. It stretches and snaps, expands and disappears. An hour can feel like a breath or an eternity. Thomas, the scullery boy, once joked to Lucy that the clock is haunted, that it runs on the lost time of those who served before them, that its gears are wound by ghosts who never left. Lucy didn't laugh. She only looked at it and whispered, "Maybe it's not haunted. Maybe it just gave up." At the end of the day, after fires had been stoked and coals shoveled and boots scrubbed, the servants returned to the dining room for their evening meal. It is not called dinner. Dinner belongs to the family. Here, it is supper, a heavy word, a meal eaten not for pleasure, but for survival. Sometimes the cook leaves a slice of pudding untouched from the upstairs tray. Sometimes a roast bone. These are small victories, unspoken gifts, moments of secret gratitude passed from hand to hand. Mrs. Penrose, the housekeeper, rarely eats with the others. She takes her meal in her room, alone. Some say it is because she values her privacy. Others believe it's because she cannot relax in front of those she commands. She must always remain above visible, but unreachable. The butler, Mr. Avery, on the other hand, dines in silence with the staff. His presence is a reminder of the line between order and chaos. He does not need to speak to lead. His fork is always aligned perfectly with his knife. His tea always stirred twice, never more. On Sundays, there is a slightly longer pause, a roast perhaps, a small dessert, the illusion of leisure. But even then, the bells ring. Even then, the guests stay late. Even then, the floor must be polished anew. A servant's meal is never just food. It is a moment borrowed from someone else's time. And when it ends, when the clock that lies ticks again toward duty, the plates are stacked, the benches scraped back, and the staff rises not because they are full, but because they must. In the hierarchy of domestic service, there are few roles as delicate, as intimate, as quietly powerful as that of the lady's maid. She is not a maid in the common sense. She does not scrub floors or carry buckets. She does not answer to the housekeeper or rise at the clang of kitchen pans. Her world is different. Her world begins and ends in silk-lined boudoirs, beside vanity tables heavy with perfume bottles, hairbrushes, powders, and pearls. She is the shadow behind the mistress of the house. Her name is Clara. To the upstairs world, Clara is invisible, not because she hides, but because her presence is expected to vanish the moment her task is complete. She is the one who zips, buttons, smooths, adjusts. She knows the difference between morning grey and dove grey, between a day bodice and an evening corset. She can fasten 30 buttons in under 2 minutes. She can tighten a waist without leaving a bruise. But Clara's real work is not in dressing her mistress. It is in undressing her secrets. A lady confides in her maid things she will tell no one else, not her husband, not her sister, not even her journal. The lady's maid is not a friend, but she is a vault. She listens, not out of loyalty, but out of necessity. Because to be a good lady's maid is to be silent, invisible, and absolutely aware. Clara knows that Lady Whitmore has been receiving letters not addressed to the house. Clara knows that the lavender scent is not just perfume, it masks the smell of laudanum. Clara knows that sometimes the mistress weeps for no reason at all and needs only her hand held. nothing more. And so she does. In the morning, Clara wakes. Before her mistress, lights the fire in the bedroom grate, warms the towels, lays out the undergarments. She selects the jewelry modest for morning, brighter for afternoon. She brushes her mistress's hair 100 times, not because it's necessary, but because it soothes. In those moments, silence is everything. The tick of the dressing room clock, the creak of floorboards settling, the rustle of a gown being lifted from its hanger. There is no room for error, no room for hesitation. A misplaced hairpin, a stained glove, a gown slightly out of season, any of these could embarrass the mistress at a luncheon or tea, and the blame would never fall on the dressmaker or the butler. It would fall on Clara. But Clara rarely makes mistakes, because Clara watches, Clara listens, and Clara remembers. At night, after Lady Whitmore retires, Clara folds every garment precisely. She removes hairpins from forgotten places. She notes the subtle shift in weight of a jewelry box. She counts the powder brushes and straightens the hand. Mirrors. She records these details in her head, like a priest reciting prayers, because to serve well is to know what will be needed before it is asked. Clara does not gossip with the other maids. She does not eat with them. Her station is peculiar, higher than the housemaids, lower than the governess. She lives in a small room adjoining her mistress's suite. It smells faintly of rosewater and ink. Some nights, when the house is quiet and even the bells sleep, Clara writes letters she never sends. Small reflections, observations, memories. She folds them neatly and tucks them behind the lining of her drawer. No one will ever read them. That is not the point. To Clara, they are the only words that belong solely to her. Her mistress once asked her, in a rare moment of tenderness, if she ever wished to marry. Clara had smiled and said, "I am already married, madam, to my duties." And it was true. The lady's maid does not live her own life. She lives in orbit of another. She is the first to see the mistress wake, and the last to see her sleep. And yet, despite it all, despite the burdens, the silences, the invisible labor, Clara feels something close to pride, because without her, the mistress would unravel. And Clara has made herself the quiet thread that holds everything in place. If there is a servant who embodies both pageantry and pressure, it is the footman. He is the ornament of the household, a decoration with a heartbeat. And in this house, that ornament's name is Edward. Edward's life is lived in posture. He is tall, not by chance, but by requirement. Broad-shouldered, with hair neatly parted and teeth uncommonly straight for a man of his station. He is hired for presence as much as for performance, because when the doors open to guests, Edward is often the first thing they see. He does not speak unless spoken to. He does not slouch. He does not cough. When he stands beside the drawing-room door during teas, he becomes a fixture, a statue with breath. His eyes remain level, his back stiff, his arms behind him, gloved and still. One guest once said, as if he were not there, "How charming." Like a Grecian column, Edward didn't blink. What most never realize is that stillness is a weight. That motionlessness takes strength. His boots, custom made, are polished every morning until they reflect light like puddles. The soles are thick, not for comfort, but for soundlessness. He walks without being heard. His presence must never interrupt the air. There is an art to being a footman, serving without presence, assisting without imprint. Edward pours wine without dripping. He clears plates without clatter. He opens doors with timing so perfect it feels preordained. But what he does best is wait. Waiting is the cornerstone of his job. Waiting behind doors, beside chairs, outside carriages. Waiting for glances, gestures, the slightest nods that mean now. He is often asked to stand in the same place for hours. When hosting dinner parties, the master insists that the footman remain motionless behind each guest chair until the final course is done. Once, a duchess dropped her fan, and Edward bent to retrieve it faster than her own breath. She never said thank you. No one ever does. His uniform is pristine crimson livery with gold trim, a white cravat, brass buttons that catch the candlelight. Like fireflies, he is dressed, not for himself, but for the house. He is a symbol of wealth, refinement, control. And yet, behind the grandeur, Edward is always calculating. He memorizes seating charts. He knows which guests prefer sherry over port, who has dietary needs, who complains of cold plates. He recalls how many spoonfuls of sugar the Colonel takes and which Oprah causes Lady Hamilton to weep. These things matter. not because he is told they do, but because he knows they do. In the servants' quarters, Edward is quieter than the rest. He keeps his boots by his bedside, cleaned nightly by his own hand. He sleeps facing the wall. Sometimes he dreams of silence so vast that even the clocks forget to tick. His back aches most days. His knees click when he climbs stairs, but he never limps. He never shows where. A limping footman is quickly replaced. There is no room for fatigue and formality. During one snowy winter, he stood outside with a tray of drinks for guests arriving by carriage. His hands trembled under the white gloves, but he held the tray steady. Later that night, his fingers were so numb he dropped a candlestick in the pantry. The cook laughed and said, "Even statues crack." Edward smiled, just once, and then went back to polishing. Because the footman's pride is not in being noticed, it is in being flawless. And though he may be unseen, though his name may never be remembered by the guests, Edward understands the strange truth of his station. He may not own the house, but without him, it does not function. And that, somehow, is enough. Before the first bell rings upstairs, before the house begins to breathe its daily rhythm, the kitchen is already alive. It is not alive with music or chatter, but with heat, with movement, with duty. The kitchen is the underworld of the manor, a world below stairs where light flickers dimly, and the air always smells of something cooking, something boiling, something on the edge of either perfection or disaster. The cook is already awake. Her name is Mrs. Temple. She does not believe in sleep, only in schedules. She has run this kitchen for 17 years and can tell the time of day by the rise of the dough or the scent of the roasting meat. She walks like a general and thinks like a queen. The scullery maids know better than to be late. The footboy knows better than to speak unless asked. The copper pots, hanging like medals across the tiled wall, must shine like morning dew by the time the breakfast bell rings. At 4 o'clock, the fires are lit. The large iron range breathes smoke and radiates heat that wraps around ankles and clings to aprons. The kitchen staff do not wear gloves, even in winter. Their hands are stained with flour, their wrists red with steam burns. The first meal of the day is for the servants themselves. Simple, quick, porridge, bread, tea. No one sits long. As soon as the first bite is swallowed, tasks begin: to pluck, vegetables to peel, pies to prepare. Upstairs, the family will expect toast, served warm, not burnt, eggs exactly 3 minutes, bacon crisp but not dry. Every tray must be laid with care linen cloths, polished spoons, silver jam pots labeled in neat script. Downstairs, there is no time for artistry, only precision. The scullery maid, her name is Alice, is perhaps the lowest in the kitchen's pecking order. She scrubs the pans black with soot. She scrapes the floors. She empties the grease traps. Her fingers are raw, her back curved from crouching, and yet, without her, nothing gleams. And in a Victorian kitchen, shine is respect. There is always movement. Dough is kneaded. Cream is whipped. Pheasants are plucked with hands, too numb to protest. Knives flash against cutting boards. Bottles clink against shelves. Every minute counts. If luncheon is served at 1, the roasts must begin by 8. The aspics must be set by 11. The jelly must tremble, not collapse. The fruit must be sliced but never brown. There is no applause for this performance. Only silence if it goes right and fury if it goes wrong. At 10 o'clock, a bell rings from the dining room. It is not a request. It is a summons. The footboy takes the tray up the back stairs, careful not to breathe near the bone china. Upstairs, the morning room is flooded with sunlight and floral scent. Downstairs, the smell is of onions and firewood. Mrs. Temple checks her clock. Dinner will be 7 courses tonight. The fishmonger is late. The rabbit delivered is too small. The new girl sliced the bread crooked. Nothing ever goes exactly right. And yet, somehow, it all must appear perfect, because the kitchen is the foundation of the house's illusion. Without the heat below, the elegance above would collapse. There is little praise, fewer thanks, but as the day swells into noise and urgency, the kitchen continues to beat steady, invisible, essential. And when the sun finally sets and the scullery is scrubbed again for morning, a strange quiet falls. In the glow of a dying coal, Mrs. Temple sits with a cup of tea gone cold. She does not smile, but she nods once, because the house for one more day has run on time, and that, in her world, is triumph. The governess does not belong, not quite servant, not quite family. She floats somewhere in the middle, shadow seated at the edge of society, dressed plainly, speaking softly, existing to shape futures that are not her own. Her name is Miss Albright. She is 32, though no one asks. Her gowns are always grey or navy, never silk. Her shoes are polished but plain. She dines alone, in the small room between the nursery and the library. At night, she reads by candlelight history, Latin, French grammar, though she has read them all before. Her role is delicate. She teaches the children of the house grammar, arithmetic, drawing, recitation. She recites poems by heart, corrects posture with a glance, encourages curiosity while maintaining obedience. Her job is not to love them, though sometimes she does. Quietly, from a safe distance, the children Henry and Beatrice wake slowly. Their room smells of lavender and chalk. Toys rest on the shelf in strict formation. Miss Albright greets them not with kisses, but with schedule. 8 o'clock, dressing and hygiene. 1:30, breakfast. 9, arithmetic. 10, handwriting. 11, outdoor walk, weather permitting. Each day mirrors the one before. The lessons may change, but the tempo never does. She speaks in measured tones, never scolds, never yells. Her authority is in her calm. At times, Lady Caraway visits the nursery. She smiles at her children, pats their hair, and compliments the coloring pages they barely drew. Then she turns to Miss Albright and asks, "Are they being diligent? Not happy? Not kind?" "Diligent." Miss Albright answers with a nod. She has no parlor of her own, no place to rest where she is not simultaneously alert. She writes letters to a sister she rarely sees, keeps them sealed in a drawer. Sometimes she cries, but never where anyone might hear. She knows her place, or rather, her lack of one. During holidays, she remains in the manor. The children still need structure. During illness, she administers tonics, reads softly, stays longer than she should at the bedside, and when the children grow bored or moody, it is not their fault, it is hers. The staff respect her, distantly. She is not invited to their jokes, but they greet her with warmth. The housekeeper sometimes leaves tea for her in a warm cup, a silent kindness. She dreams, now and then, of a school of her own, a room with shelves. She filled herself, young girls seated in rows, learning because they want to, not because they must. A life with meaning. A life not borrowed. But in the manor, she is the caretaker of manners and minds, a guide through childhood's formal garden. She weeds out laziness, prunes tantrums, waters intellect, all while remaining invisible. At 4 o'clock, it is time for the children's hour. Miss Albright reads aloud, fables, tales of kings and courage, adventures far beyond these velvet walls. The children lean closer, not to the story, but to her voice. They do not know it now, but one day they will forget her name and remember only the calm she carried, and in some quiet way, that is enough. There is a quiet power in a well-kept book, a smooth ledger, bound in worn leather, its pages ruled with ink and patience. To most, it's a record. To the butler, it is the heart of the house. His name is Mr. Graham, and no one knows the manor better than he does. He moves with rushed, never idle. His hair is graying at the temples. His waistcoat is always buttoned, his shoes polished, his voice even. He is not merely the head of the servants, he is the steward of order. Mr. Graham keeps the ledger in his study, a narrow room lined with keys and inventories. It lists the wines in the cellar, the silverware in the drawers, the names and ages of every footman, maid, and boy under his watch. Dad also records discreetly who has been late, who dropped a tray, who speaks too much in the halls. Nothing escapes him, not a chipped glass, not a raised voice, not the scent of perfume in the wrong corridor. His day begins before sunrise, before the cook lights the stove, before the mistress rings her bell. He inspects the dining room, measures the table settings, ensures that every spoon aligns with its neighbor. A crooked fork is a warning, a smudged goblet, a crack in the foundation. At breakfast, he pours the tea for the master himself, silent, precise. He knows exactly how hot the water must be, how long the leaves must steep. He does not ask, he remembers. Memory, to Mr. Graham, is not a gift, it is a tool, and it sharpens with every year. He does not raise his voice, he does not argue, but when he looks at a footman too long, the boy straightens his collar and nods. He speaks in orders that sound like suggestions. Perhaps the hallway rug would benefit from a shift. meaning it should have been done yesterday. No one dares question the butler, not because he is cruel, but because he is correct, and in the hierarchy of service, correctness is everything. The master trusts him, the mistress consults him, the other servants watch him. He knows when to speak, and when silence will carry more weight. He writes in the ledger with a fountain pen, his script delicate and severe. March 7th, new cutlery received. March 8th, incident with footboy Manor, spoke to him. March 9th, cellar inventory complete, claret low, order soon. He writes it not for praise, not for history, but because the house depends on the balance he maintains. In the rare moments when he is alone, he opens a second book, not the ledger, not for the house, for himself. A small volume of poetry, worn and ribbon-marked, Tennyson, Wordsworth, sometimes Blake. He reads a few lines, softly, like secrets meant only for the wallpaper. Outside that study, he is always composed, but inside, he allows a breath, a sliver of softness. Then he closes the book, straightens his cuffs, and steps back into the corridors that rely on him to never falter, because the house must run as if by magic, and Mr. Graham, though unseen by guests, is the magician. The ledger never lies, and neither does he. There is an art to cleaning that few ever recognize. Not the scrubbing or the dusting, but the choreography, the timing, the silent precision that happens when no one is watching. The drawing room is the jewel of the manor, not because it holds treasure, but because it holds the family's image. It is where the guests are received, where tea is poured, where gossip curls between spoons, and compliments, where portraits hang on walls that whisper of lineage and taste. End every morning, before the first footstep crosses its rug. It must be perfect. The maid assigned to the drawing room is Lily. She is young, careful, and almost invisible. She moves, like breath between curtains. Her apron pocket holds a cloth, her hand a feather duster worn soft by years of swirls across gilded frames. She begins at dawn. First, the fireplace. Ashes from last evening's warmth must be swept away gently, so as not to smudge the marble hearth. The grate is polished, the brass tools straightened like soldiers at attention. Next, the carpets. She beats them outside when weather allows. Today, it does not, so she brushes them silently, her motions slow, steady, deliberate. The furniture must not shift. Every chair leg must return to its exact spot. Guests notice nothing until something is amiss. Then, they notice everything. Lily wipes each surface twice, once to lift the dust, again to leave no streaks. She knows the difference between satinwood and mahogany, between rose oil and beeswax, between clean and truly clean. The chandelier above her is crystal and cruel. It mocks her from its height, but every third Thursday it must be dusted too. Each prism gleamed with gloved fingers balanced on a ladder, too narrow to trust. She never complains, because this room, this drawing room, is a mirror, not of her, but of the family who owns it. If a speck of ash clings to the mantel, it is a sign of laziness. If a streak runs across the window pane, it is a mark of shame. No one will thank her. That is not why she dusts. She cleans because the room must glow, because light, when it filters through lace curtains, must find nothing to cling to but silence. She works quickly, but without hurry. The grandfather clock ticks behind her. The scent of lavender polish floats gently on the air. By the time the mistress descends the staircase, the drawing room is ready. Not grand, not loud, but calm. The rug has no wrinkles. The cushions, no creases. The tea set sparkles in the corner, waiting for 4 o'clock. Lily vanishes. Just as footsteps approach, she does not belong in the room once it is full, but as she down the servants' corridor, she glances back once, just to see it. Her work, her care, her trace. It will be gone in an hour, smudged by boots, dented by elbows. The fireplace will roar again. The scent of perfume and cigars will fill the air, but for now it is flawless, and in that moment, so is she. The final bell has rung, not the dinner bell, not the handbell of the mistress, but the silent one, the shifting of air when the last candle is snuffed, and even the mice know it is time to rest. The house sleeps, or at least, it seems to. Upstairs, the family is tucked into canopied beds. Beneath the embroidered coverlets, the master has had his brandy, the mistress her novel. The children dream in nursery silence, but below stairs, there is still motion. Soft motion. The scullery maid scrubs one last pan. Her hands raw from lie and heat. She hums not out of joy, but habit, a small tune passed from memory to fingers. The night footman makes his rounds, lantern in hand, checking locks and latches. His steps are measured, not from fear, but from duty. He knows which floorboards creak and which curtains must remain. Drawn dot in the linen room, the housemaid folds one more towel before bed. She smooths the fabric like a prayer. And deep within the pantry, the butler closes his ledger. He sighs not loudly but long enough for the room to hear. Another day accounted for. Another page filled. The manor rests like a creature in hibernation, still on the outside, alive just beneath the surface. There is a comfort in this rhythm, in knowing that while others sleep, you keep watch. That the ticking of clocks and settling of beams is not silence, but music. The servants retire to their quarters' narrow beds, woolen blankets, the scent of soap and old wood. No canopy above, no hearth, but peace. Lily, the maid from the drawing room, brushes her hair exactly 50 times. Miss Albright, the governess, folds her shawl and places it by the candle. Mr. Graham, the butler, removes his waistcoat with deliberate grace. The house has rules, even in rest. Voices must be whispers, doors must never slam, light must not bleed through the cracks, and so they sleep not with the indulgence of comfort, but with the grace of exhaustion. In the darkness the house breathes. Stone remembers footsteps, wallpaper remembers secrets, fireplaces remember warmth, and the servants, each in their narrow world, find sleep not as escape it, as brief surrender. Tomorrow will come, with footsteps and bells, with brass to polish and rugs to beat, with menus to memorize and moods to anticipate. But tonight, for a few hours, the house belongs to silence. The stars blink beyond lace curtains, the wind sighs against shutters, and in the stillness, everything is enough. Not perfect, not painless, but enough, because the beauty of a sleeping house is not in what it hides, but in what it holds. And somewhere, in the gentle shadows between duty and dream, the servants rest, together, alone, at peace.